My family didn't even try to let me say goodbye to my grandfather and didn't tell me anything, even though they knew that he wasn't going to make it another week until when I was supposed to visit him, and now I want to cut them all off. I just got off the phone with my grandmother, and I am truly at a loss for words. For some background, my parents have been divorced since I was a kid. My father relocated once I went to college, and my grandfather, my father's dad, started battling cancer shortly after my sophomore year. He and my grandmother were unable to attend my undergraduate or graduate school graduations because of his illness. My father, on the other hand, voluntarily skipped my graduate school graduation, citing how it wasn't that important because he already saw me walk across the stage once. This, coupled with years of emotional abuse and neglect, led me to the decision to go low to no contact with my father about 2 years ago. While my relationship with him has been strained, I tried my best to maintain a connection to my grandparents, despite the several states divide between us. My grandfather was a man of few words, but our conversations were always genuine. The last time I remember seeing my grandfather in person, which was before the stuff with my dad happened, he gave me a big hug before going to the airport, a kiss on the cheek, and told me he loved me. I would call multiple times a month checking in, asking about their well-beings, and would sometimes hear my grandfather listening in on the other line. Each time I would ask my grandmother if I could speak to him, she would make up some reason as to why he couldn't come to the phone. She kept me up to date on his treatments, and I knew things were getting bad last summer. My mom and I were going to plan a trip to go visit my grandparents who live hundreds of miles away from me so I could say goodbye to my grandfather, as I had a feeling his time was coming. We didn't tell them of the trip and were going to do it as a surprise. The week before my mom and I were scheduled to fly out, I got a text from my aunt saying that my grandfather had passed. I was crushed. No viewing, no funeral, but they told me they were thinking of doing a celebration of life in the spring. They did cremate him, but no one other than my grandmother allegedly was present for it. I did call my dad to express my condolences, and he mentioned how my grandfather passed away disappointed in me because my father and I hadn't spoken anymore. This brings us to now. I called my grandmother to check in. She mentioned how she regrets and feels bad that I'm not as close to her and my grandfather as I am to my mom's parents, which is true, as for a period of time in my childhood, my mom and I lived with her parents. Growing up, we also lived about an hour away from them compared to the 12 to 14-hour drive it would take to see my dad's side of the family. The one that they see the most and interact with the most is more than likely the favorite grandchild. What? I have one other cousin on my dad's side, so was she implying I wasn't the favorite? But here's what made me skin crawl: she gave me a play-by-play of the weeks before my grandfather passed. Apparently, my grandfather had scheduled to do a medically assisted unaliving, since the state they live in is a pass with dignity state, 2 days after he had passed, which still would have been the week before my trip to see them. My dad, aunts, uncles and cousin came the weekend before to spend time with him and say their goodbyes. No one had told me of my grandfather's plan. No phone call, text, email, nothing. Then, the day of my grandfather's passing, the doctors asked my grandmother and the family present if they would like to administer a medication to keep him alive just a few hours longer so that other family and friends who may not have been present could have the chance to say goodbye. They declined, saying how my grandfather wouldn't have wanted that. His intestines twisted up because of his medications, causing sepsis, so he was in an exorbitant amount of pain. My face went hot on the phone. I understand not calling on the day of his passing when there's a lot of chaos and you're trying to process your own grief in that moment, but the fact that there was a plan for him to peacefully go that week, and I could have had a chance to say goodbye, makes my blood boil. Why didn't someone call or text about his intentions? The countless times I asked on the phone to speak to him, why couldn't she just put him on the line once? I truly don't want to believe that my grandfather was disappointed in me, but I'm starting to question why I was so out of the loop. Is it because I'm not the favorite? It took every fiber of my being not to lash out and scream as my grandmother sobbed, recounting the story on the phone. I mustered up the strength not to break down and found a way to get off the phone with my grandmother. I don't know what to think, but my heart is telling me that I am no longer part of that side of the family. If there even is a celebration of life, at this point, I'm not sure I would want to go. My mom suggested I write in and get people to weigh in, but she is on my side. She's been great through all of this. So Reddit, would I be a jerk if I continue this no contact and extend it to my dad's whole side of the family after they refused to let me contact my grandfather and say goodbye before he passed away? Commenter: your grandmother was gatekeeping your access to your grandfather. You can probably think of the reasons, but not being the favorite is not likely one of them. Jealousy, fear of financial loss, control freak, or she's a miserable old drama queen who likes a scapegoat. So sorry for your loss. Update 1. I decided to call my aunt, the one who had notified me via text that my grandfather had passed in the first place. She, I figured, would be the most straightforward about everything. I didn't initially go into it with the whole "why didn't anyone call me so I could speak to him to say goodbye?" But I wanted to get some answers. I wanted closure. I told her I was having a hard time understanding if he had a whole plan, and I had numerous chances to talk to him, but I wasn't given the chance to. First, she let me know that she and seemingly her other siblings, including my dad, didn't know about my grandfather's wishes for a medically assisted death with dignity until after he had passed. She was consumed with her own grief of losing a father that she, or anyone, had the space to call me as they were still trying to process their own emotions regarding his death. Up until the very end, he wasn't thinking about anyone but himself. He was a very selfish man, she said. As far as the whole, grandfather passed away disappointed in you, she vehemently denied it and apologized for my father's ignorance. She validated my feelings but questioned how much better it would have felt for me to say my goodbyes. I can't say for certain if it would or wouldn't, but I can speak to how I feel and it sucks. My aunt insisted I didn't have that strong of a connection to him, and compared my relationship to the one she had with him and my grandmother did. Realistically, how much of a part of your life was he? I wouldn't let somebody that didn't have that much of an impact on your life while he was alive have an impact on your life now that he's gone. I would certainly hope that my relationship with my grandfather is different than the one my grandmother had with her life partner. My aunt then said I didn't need validation from my dad's side of the family with all that I've accomplished in my life, but she's here if I need to talk. I'm still not sure how to move forward, but I've been journaling, per the recommendation of my therapist. Specifically, writing about my grandfather and I's relationship, and the relationship with my father has been helping me navigate my emotions, seeing it written in words. We're also adding more grief counseling topics into our sessions, so there's that. That's all I have for now. I guess be on the lookout if I ever publish a memoir. Thank you for your advice and words of wisdom. If there are any further updates, I'll be sure to share. Commenter, not a jerk. She is right. It was on your parents to call you, everybody else would rightfully assume that they would call you. And she is right with this, you can't have been that close with your grandpa or you would have had the same information they had. When did you last talk to him? Oh, P responds, the last time I spoke to my grandfather on the phone was right after the graduate school graduation he couldn't attend because of his health. He and I used to chat frequently. I call at least twice a month to check in on his condition over the next year and a half after my graduation and the fight with my dad. My grandmother wouldn't let me talk to grandfather. Update 2 months later. After conversations with my grandmother and my aunt, things have gone relatively quiet on their end. I moved states closer to home for a new job and have just been settling in the last couple of months since my original post. Fast forward to a few days ago, a colleague and I were looking at obituaries at some cold cases. We like true crime shows and podcasts, and I recommended Clues. One obituary we came across in a case that caught our eye was relatively short, which my coworker said he had never seen one with so little in it. I thought about my grandfather's obituary and said that my grandfather's was similar. I went to Google his to show my coworker, but to my surprise, I couldn't find it. I know my grandfather's first, middle, and last name, DOB, date of passing, the funeral home he was cremated in, etc. We both thought it was weird, and I just tried to brush it off. But when I got home that night, I began digging through the obituaries on the funeral home's website and newspaper articles in his town online. Nothing. It's like my grandfather's death never happened. Now, after several conversations with the funeral home, I can confirm Dad's family took my name off the obituary. My grandfather is now listed as being survived by one grandchild, my cousin. Not only that, but someone in the family asked for it to be taken off the website, which is why I couldn't find it. I don't know when they did this, the funeral home didn't divulge, but I do know that because I'm not listed as the direct next of kin, I can't change it back. A picture of him and I from when I was 2/3 is literally hanging in my living room. I'm at a loss for words. I can't even fathom how you have a conversation with someone of hey, why did you take my name of my grandfather's obituary? And change it to say he only has one grandchild. I don't even think it is worth expressing to them how deeply hurtful this is. I don't even want to bring it up to them. So that's I think where I will leave this. I'm going to continue to lean on my mom and her side of the family for guidance in all of this. And of course, therapy. Thank you to everyone for your encouragement, love and support during this time. I really appreciate it.